great history down here, stemming all the way back to the early Dutch days. Let's go way, way back, 1653. Peter Stuyvesant, who was the Dutch governor of New Amsterdam, had a couple pressing issues to deal with. He had the encroaching English coming from the north, threatening the Dutch colony. He also had these ongoing wars with the Lenape Indians. In 1653, he says, you know what, I'm settling this issue once and for all. He builds a wall, guys, all the way from the East River down here, straight across here, roughly 12 feet tall, all the way to the Hudson River, to keep out the English and keep out the Indians. All that's left of that wall today, guys, is the name of this street, Wall Street. That is where the name comes from the wall that Peter Stuyvesant built here. Now, this building over here, this is Federal Hall National Memorial, guys. It was built in 1842, initially as a customs house. But what I want to talk about predates this building. On this site stood the old British City Hall when the British ran New York. After the American Revolution, that building that stood right there, guys, became the first capital of the United States. It was right there on April 30th, 1789, that George Washington took the oath of office as our first president, guys. Cool, right? Yeah, can I get a little? Wow. I know, our Bill of Rights was written in that old building, guys. Yep. Now, the Capitol was here for 1 year and 1 year only. You know, the southern states were worried about the Capitol being too far north. They thought it would benefit the northern states. Northern states didn't want it too far south, so they compromised. Went to Philadelphia, later to Washington, D.C. Now, after the war, we had a lot of war debt to pay off, and Congress sitting here decided to issue $80 million in war bonds to help pay for the war debt. And with that kind of money out there, they needed a central market. There had been a lot of informal trading on the street out here and in local coffee shops. But in 1792, 24 brokers got together and signed what was known as the Buttonwood Agreement. Called that simply because it was signed under a buttonwood tree that stood over here. And guys, that formally established the New York Stock Exchange. This is it today, guys, in all its glory. $5.5 trillion are traded here annually now. They used to let the public go in and do trading, but after 9/11 they put an end to that. This building was built in 1903 by George Post. If you look up here, you'll see a whole group of statues up here, which was done by John Quincy Adams Ward. It's called Lady Integrity, Protecting the Works of Man. And you'll see you have Lady Integrity right there in the center. To her left is Mining and Industry. To her right is Science and Invention. Every now and then, guys, they come down here and I yell up at that lady. I say, "Lady, wake up!" She falls asleep. And you know, things like Enron happen, nobody's looking, people start shoving money in their pocket. Gotta keep that lady on her toes all the time. Glad you gotta stick at it. Right. Now, guys, not done. Now, guys, this is the old J.P. Morgan Bank, built in 1913. But what I want to talk about happened right out in front of here. This was the site of one of the very first terrorism attacks in New York City. September 16, 1920, a canvas-covered wagon pulls up here, loaded to the rim with dynamite and iron sash weights. It was a beautiful sunny day. Hundreds of people spilling out of these buildings, getting ready to enjoy their lunch out here. People are so preoccupied, nobody notices the driver of that wagon get out and simply vanish into the crowd. As the clock hour struck noon, that wagon exploded with a blinding flash and a deafening roar that just echoed throughout the canyon walls of the financial district here. Windows half a mile away were blown out. Fire shot hundreds of feet into the sky. Shrapnel rained down upon people. 33 people were killed and hundreds of others injured. To this day, nobody's ever claimed responsibility. They thought maybe they were Bolshevik revolutionists from Russia, maybe anarchists, nobody knows. But when we're done, I want you guys to look at the side of the building here. You will see shrapnel marks from that blast in 1920. Literally, big chunks of the building have been just torn out from that blast in 1920. Really a sad reminder of that day. So guys, my favorite story down here has to do with this big skyscraper right here. This is the old Bank of Manhattan building, built in 1929 by a guy named Craig Severance. Now, when Craig Severance was building this skyscraper here, Walter P. Chrysler was building the Chrysler building up north. You guys remember earlier?
Yes.
I said, remember the Chrysler building? I'm going to talk about it. They were both racing to build the tallest building in the world. Now, Chrysler up north publicly announced in the newspapers, he says, guys, I'm topping my building off at 925 feet. Severance down here says, great, I'll make mine 927, 2 feet higher. Take that. At the end of each construction day, Craig Severance's crew are all looking north, you know, to see the progress Chrysler's making. Chrysler's crew, they're all looking south down here to see how he's doing. Very last day of construction. Chrysler, like he said, tops off at 925. Severance, like he says, 927. But Chrysler pulls a real jiu-jitsu move, guys. He built the spire of the Chrysler building inside the building so nobody could see it. And at the last moment, it raised that sucker up, topping his building off at 182 feet high. And let's just say it was one of those real wham, 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 moments down here for Craig Severance. But these became known as skyscraper wars, and this is serious stuff. Your building was an extension of your manhood, so to speak, a symbol of your company's strength and vitality. Guys, it's sad to say, the end of Wall Street down here was the slave market. Slaves were bought and sold on Wall Street. It was slaves that built that wall for Peter Stuyvesant. 1 out of 4 people in New York City was owned by somebody else during the years of slavery, and New York State was the last of the northern states to abolish slavery. That was in 1827. Now this street here, guys, Broad Street, look at how wide this street is. That's because this used to be a canal. Boats used to come right up here and drop off goods to the local warehouses. That was filled in under British rule. The church we passed coming in, guys, last thing I'm going to speak about, Trinity Church. Some of you guys might recognize that church from the movie National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. But Trinity Church, chartered by King William III in 1697, it burned to the ground during the American Revolution in 1776. In fact, that fire destroyed over 493 buildings down here, including that church. It was rebuilt again by 1790, destroyed again from a snowstorm in 1836, of all things. That structure's been there since 1846. Guys, some of New York's most famous citizens are buried there. Alexander Hamilton, he is the man on our $10 bill. He was the first Secretary of Treasury of the United States, helped incite the American Revolution. He died in that famous duel with the Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr. He's buried there. Robert Fulton, who's one of the inventors of the steamship, is buried there. Francis Lewis, the only signer of our Declaration of Independence, to be buried in New York, buried there. I love it down here, guys. I come down here sometimes at nighttime when nobody's down here. I talk to Georgie Boy there, and I say, George, man, how'd you cross that river without being detected by the British? Especially in those tight pants, George. How'd you do that? We go back and forth.
Okay, mate, I'll drop your camera in a minute.
I usually wind up in Bellevue Hospital after speaking with him for a while. With beaver testicles being rubbed on.
There you go.
So some great history down here, guys. Great stuff. So why don't we take a minute to take the pictures, and then we'll head back up to the bus.
Great.
Great.